Yet again, it's a video about Cyberpunk 2077, but this time I want to take a different approach. Some time ago, I created this video right here titled The Anthem Conspiracy Theory. It was in reference to some leaked documents that had surfaced many months prior and discussed the speculative idea that Anthem may in fact be the incubation room for a new form of loot manipulating AI. Now, to be clear, I did not fully believe that theory. The documents read like a bad college project that got anonymously posted as a way to sort of troll, and I also did not try to propose the speculations and what-if statements as any sort of concrete fact or even a likelihood, but that video was extremely fun to make, and sometimes going down the rabbit hole and asking what if is just really interesting, even if it's not ultimately something that should be relied on as an extreme likelihood. Today, I want to take a similar dive with Cyberpunk 2077 and talk about the financial trail of investment interests that create a spiderweb surrounding CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk itself. Before going any further, pretty much all of this will be based on the investigative work of Sibsidian over at the Triple S League. They have a wonderful video up with this exact information, and I will also be drawing from their constructed graph. So with that in mind, anyone even vaguely interested in Cyberpunk 2077 should absolutely subscribe to their channel. They are easily one of the best sources for information pertaining to Cyberpunk on all of YouTube, and I'll link it down in the description. I've been chatting with them behind the scenes, and the complexity of this situation extends to a far greater depth than the info which I am about to discuss, but now is not the right time to go into detail. It is fairly clear that Cyberpunk 2077 will be an increasingly vibrant focal point over coming months in the lead up to its 2020 release, so rest assured the opportunities to speculate and the further confirmation or denial of those speculations has plenty of runway left. With all that being said, let's get started. It's no secret I often clash with current mainstream gaming media, although clash might be the wrong word for it. It mostly consists of certain gaming journalists posting trashy drivel and me dissecting it or insulting them. But there have now been instances where they fire back, most notably, and most recently, an article from writer Ian Schur of CNET in which he manipulated the interview material, operated under false pretenses, and attempted to spur advertisers to withdraw from my own and other YouTubers' channels as an attempt to impact our livelihood. Short answer, it failed. Long answer, I roasted his bitch ass, and his article was the laughingstock of, at this point, combined with the other creators who covered the story, millions of people. However, even though the encounter ultimately benefited me, both in terms of relative growth and income, it still made me realize that there are intrinsic motivations behind many of these articles, especially within the games industry. I was approached under the pretense of an investigation to determine YouTube's inner workings and the seemingly ingrained audience interest when it comes to negative material or content. Instead of actually legitimately pursuing that angle, Ian Schur had taken months of his time to contact advertisers and try to get them to back away from the channels he discussed. His article was written before it had even been written. Now, what I mean by that is that he did not go into this with any sort of unbiased predisposition. He was not trying to learn or evolve or produce valuable information. He had a now obvious goal, which he was questing like a little bitchy white knight to fulfill by whatever means necessary. That goal had also been present for quite a long time as he laid the groundwork for this hit piece. These events were definitely a wake-up call for me. My idealistic version of journalism is that these individuals will be operating in the pursuit of truth, but the unfortunate reality is that in a lot of circumstances that simply isn't true. I've long had moments of skepticism when witnessing the types of articles that will post in close proximity to one another. Oftentimes a critical piece of a certain game or some kind of negative article will be published, and alongside that, from 3 or 4 seemingly unconnected outlets, a similar piece will surface. Sometimes these parallel articles will even use the exact same phrasing, but until recently I had brushed that off as a kind of mirror phenomenon to what happens on YouTube as well, where YouTubers cover similar topics in a short time span because that's just what is relevant. However, after learning more about the relative time frame of written journalistic pieces, it became clear to me that in a lot of instances this actually cannot be true, because from start to finish, the process of crafting, approving, and publishing these articles is longer than a day or two. In extreme cases, it can be weeks or months, but even on the low end of that spectrum, it is not a similar case to YouTubers because there are many more steps required. I can find a topic I enjoy, do a chunk of research, write, edit, and upload a video in a single day, most of the time. And unless these journalists literally see another article from a separate outlet entirely and frantically type their own with a similar message to have it instantly approved and uploaded to their site, they must in fact be somewhat coordinating, because to both begin and then subsequently post these similar perspectives would require at least a modicum of communication and synchronization. Alternatively, a lot of these journalists attend specific events or conventions and could very well be witnessing the same material, thus leading to similar subject matter and time frame for their written work. But even with that holding true, because it is in fact true, to have so many of them take such similar positions, it suggests to me that there is an echo chamber fully constructed and that a large chunk of these journalists know one another and communicate regularly regarding upcoming work. For two extreme examples of this sort of phenomenon in media, though not specific to the games industry, we have the coordinated language regarding fake news and Easter worshippers. Now, I've chosen one example from both the left and the right side of the political spectrum because this isn't about swaying anyone, this is to outline collusion between sources when it comes to the reporting of or the reaction to journalism and news. First, we can see that in the aftermath of a truly tragic event, a series of politicians over the span of just a couple of hours began systematically referring to the victims of that event as Easter worshippers. Now, this would not be of any significance at all if it had happened as an isolated event or instance, but there were numerous instances, all tightly grouped within a couple of hours, and the term Christians has always been associated with Easter, not Easter worshippers. This was a brand new way of referring to individuals who celebrate the holiday, and it happened in a near simultaneous and coordinated way, coming from multiple different individuals. The second example is far more obvious. Here is a montage of dozens of news channels discussing the phenomenon of fake news.
Sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these things simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is something that shatters all pretense of individual media outlets being entirely independent, though to be fair, I do agree that a lot of news is fake news, it's an actual problem, but still, there is no possible way that these journalists, producers, and anchors came up with that exact paragraph all on their own, all at the same time. Someone told them to say it, so they did. They bowed and they said it. And again, this is not an effort to sway anyone to either end of the political spectrum. This is to show that in media and journalism, there is communication and coordination, and we would be utterly naive to believe it does not happen in gaming news as well. This is what finally brings us to Cyberpunk 2077. I won't rehash old material in depth, but there have been a few different outlets and journalists who have taken it upon themselves to discuss the recent gameplay and trailer while making insinuations of mishandled or callous representations of various different demographics. This is a subjective interpretation without any evidence of intent, and in truth, the positive press surrounding the game is far greater than its detractors, but with such little substance and such a flimsy foundation, even in the face of contextual clarity from the game's conceptual creator himself, it leads me to speculate that there may be further motivation behind the false altruism that is so often proposed as their incentive. Now we arrive at the work done by the SSS League. Essentially, by tracing financial information back through the spiderweb, it can be shown that Polygon, Kotaku, and the Gamer Network, which encompasses outlets such as Eurogamer and Rock Paper Shotgun, have direct connections through investor interests or financial ownership straight back to the Epic Games Store. Why is this relevant? Because CD Projekt Red is a development arm of CD Projekt, and CD Projekt is responsible for GOG, or Good Old Games. Good Old Games is a storefront much like Epic Games and Steam, but GOG actually takes a far more consumer-friendly stance. GOG has been struggling recently, but in partnership with Microsoft is getting ready to unveil its newest update, Galaxy 2.0, in the somewhat near future. Now, if we hop over to the Epic Store, Tim Sweeney, Epic CEO, has made it clear that he believes developers will decide who wins between his own storefront and Steam, and his primary tactic is to poach exclusive deals, obviously going after titles that are projected to be heavy hitters, such as Borderlands 3, The Outer Worlds, Metro Exodus, etc., etc. There are also some indie games interlaced into that roster as well, but his position is that exclusivity is the method by which to grow an audience the fastest. CD Projekt Red will obviously be adding Cyberpunk 2077 to their own storefront, GOG, and with Cyberpunk 2077 poised to potentially be one of the largest releases in gaming history, this will mean a massive boost to their own platform. However, in classic CD Projekt form, they have also made it clear the game will be coming to Steam as well, and since Steam is the current titanic competitor to the Epic Store, and the game has already outsold through exclusively pre-orders all competitive games on the market this month, it is already shaping up to be a large motivational and profit-driving factor for Steam and, inevitably, GOG. CD Projekt Red has already confirmed the game will not be an Epic Store exclusive, so here we are, examining a game already picking up momentum as one of the most hyped releases ever in gaming history, and it will not be to the benefit of the Epic Store. This is where we see the importance behind the financial spiderweb, with GOG Galaxy 2.0 on the horizon, accompanied by a game that is going to, and already is, breaking records. It is not in the interests of the Epic Store, knowing it will not obtain exclusive rights even for a short period of time, as with Borderlands 3. It is not in their interest to promote this game, or help it succeed. On the contrary, it would be better if the game did poorly, at least for them, since it may even spur a lot of users to abandon the Epic platform for a storefront like GOG 2.0, on which they may remain if the platform proves sufficient. And one of the most highly anticipated games in years from a community-endorsed publisher and developer is housed there as well. Not to mention a final factor, since the game is a first-party IP that will be sold on a first-party storefront, a lot of players will buy the game there specifically to support CD Projekt as much as possible. Epic is in competition with GOG, and GOG has recently been struggling financially, that is true, but with 2.0 and Cyberpunk 2077 in unison, that could all turn around. And in any corporate space, having your competition thrive and grow is typically unwelcome. We know that modern media collaborates and coordinates. In an ideal world, independent news outlets would all operate as their own isolated entity, free from overarching control. But the loudest voice is always money, and with a large amount of money being funneled into the Epic Store, with more than one multi-billion-dollar company deeply invested in its success, is it really that unexpected to see directives funneled down through the ranks with the intent on curbing some of the mounting enthusiasm? The public evidence of financial ties does not guarantee a cohesive attempt to smear Cyberpunk 2077 for the benefit of the Epic Store. I am not accusing anyone of impropriety or illegal activity, but when examining the broader picture, I would believe it would be naive to not ask the forever valuable and ultimately interesting question, what if? What if these companies have told their partners and their subordinates, whom they control through majority investment, to paint a cornerstone of the competition's success in a negative light? What if the journalists communicated, past and present, to make this a reality? And what if this is just the beginning? The Epic Store isn't going anywhere, and neither is GOG for the near future, at least until they have rounded the bend and seen how 2.0 will progress with the added hype of Cyberpunk 2077. Would it be so hard to believe that this game, based on megacorporations and the corruption of corporate greed, would be the centerpiece in a less exaggerated version of what it seeks to portray? I find myself constantly wondering, what if? That's it for today, though. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. We have merch, memberships, stuff like that, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. Also, again, please do subscribe to the Triple S League. They did some phenomenal work with this concept. Thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.